Well, hello there. You're watching the press preview. A first look at what is on the front pages. Time to see what's making the headlines then with the Sun's political editor, Harry Cole, and The Guardian's deputy political editor, Jessica Elgot. Welcome and great to see both of you. So let's take a look at the front pages, shall we? Kicking off with the Financial Times. It leads with the new deal between the UK and the EU, which promises a closer working relationship, concessions from the UK over fishing rights, and plans for greater freedom of movement for young Britons on the continent. The Eye reports that that last aspect is yet to be settled, but that individual EU states will be allowed to decide whether UK passport holders can use the faster European queues at airports. The Metro sees the potential, though, for conflict. The headline, Brexit Battle 2 begins. So here it is then. Telegraph puts it simply, kiss goodbye to Brexit. The Mail calls it Starmer's surrender. Surrender is also the word of the day for the Daily Express. The Sun's take, done up like a kipper. But The Guardian offers a more positive outlook, pointing out the Prime Minister's assertion that it will give Britain a greater role in the world stage. And The Mirror in buoyant mood, quoting Sir Keir's insistence that the deal is a win-win. And The Times too highlighting the Prime Minister welcoming what he's calling a new era in relations between the UK and the Star. And finally, we won't dwell on the specifics of this one. The Star, though, focusing on Boris Johnson's criticism of Sir Keir Starmer in relation to the deal. Makes quite interesting reading. Anyway, so it's like old times, isn't it? Harry Cole and Jessica Elgot are here, loving the contrast in the papers. Should we kick off with yours and then go to yours? Crack on.
Absolutely, Jess and I have been sitting next to each other literally all day at the press conference, at the briefing afterwards, and now here's tonight. So we are well covered. Look, he has been done up like a kipper. This is not the EU's first rodeo. This is Keir Starmer's first negotiation. He made a fatal mistake on Saturday morning that he briefed the Times. Our colleague Stephen Swinford, he did an interview into Saturday's papers where he said, I'm going to sign this deal whatever happens. Yeah, we're signing the deal. The deal's great. The deal's done. It's brilliant. The deal wasn't done because on Sunday night, the EU turned up 10:30 at night and said, oh, you know what? You know, we said, 3 or 4, 5, 6 years on fishing for continued access to British waters. It's now 12 years. And if you don't sign up to 12 years, we're not going to come to your big summit today. And lo and behold, he had to swallow it. And they tried to put a brave face on it, saying, oh, it's 12 years of stability. But the fishing industry have gone bananas. Yes, it's not that big an issue, but it's totemic when it comes to the Brexit cause. It's all about our sovereignty, taking back control of our fishing waters, our borders, our laws. All of this has gone up.
Dynamic alignment.
Well, all of that's gone
lovely phrases,
up on the
we remember.
side. And actually, it's not actually a deal. Starmer's getting into a dangerous habit, I think, of overcooking things. He's trying to make this thing that I'm a bit like Donald Trump. I'm just blowing stuff up. I'm moving quickly and breaking things and bringing them together. And I've got this energy. But the India trade deal, fine, was OK. The US trade deal was bare bones. It's not a Brexit trade deal. It was just a damage limitation exercise on tariffs. And this isn't actually a deal. This is just a sort of heads of terms. This isn't a contract. They basically agreed to carry on talking for months and months and possibly years and years about various things on defence and farming and goods and alignment. But nothing really in this is actually that binding.
Yeah, but they always said this was going to be a work in progress.
Well, Brexit itself, as we say, is a work in progress. Brexit is not a destination. It's always going to be a process. Oh. And all this does is open up to, wait for it, another 10 years of this.
Oh, so there we go. Or 12.
Here we go again. You kick the beehive and it's...
Yeah, well, to be fair on fishing, it's Boris Johnson's fishing deal, and it's no greater quota access.
Never meant to be 12.
How long was it meant to be for, then?
Well, it was 3 years. It was meant to be a sort of phased transition towards our great Brexit freedoms. But no, he's gone and kept it for another 12 years.
The Guardian's take.
I think a lot of what I was saying. On the other hand, I think one of the things that has always been the case, and one of the reasons they put this summit date in the diary 6 months ago, which as a negotiating tactic is an interesting one, because then you have to do then you have to do the deal by that date. You've booked Lancaster House, you've told everyone that's when you're going to do the deal, and of course that puts you in quite a precarious position. But I think for Keir Starmer, the symbolism of the deal is the thing. The idea that Britain is turning the page on this idea that it's in retreat from the world, that it's in this protectionist mindset now, and it is redressing some of the balance, which, plenty of Remainers, and they are now the majority, the polls tell us.
Just as natural.
Felt.
Only one poll that counts.
And quite, but I mean, plenty of them are, there's been a bit of a turnover in support for it.
Yeah, and people have said, to be fair on that point, that the mandate that Keir Starmer had was for a reset. So anyway, in the election...
All of this is in the Labour... Everything that he's done today is in the Labour manifesto.
You carry on. I'll come back on that in a minute.
Apart from youth mobility, but again, the polls tell us that the general public doesn't seem to have much of a problem with young Europeans coming here for a time-limited period. And we'll see how that goes, because that feels to me like something was quite a big concession, that the EU started off saying they wouldn't have a time limited, and now it's got a time limit. And if it's the price for doing a deal that'll allow quite a lot more trade to happen between the two countries, look, ultimately this government's got to get growth. It's got to get it from somewhere, and international trade is one of the only places that it's looking for.
And the youth, or just on the youth part of this, the youth experience scheme, or whatever it's now called, I felt like I was listening to Alton Towers day trips, or a trip to the Calais supermarkets to buy some camembert.
Yeah.
I mean, why can't they just call it what it is? Is like, if you're under 30, you will be allowed to come here, work here, study here.
There's two things there. One, it is not a return to a free-for-all, free movement, as when we were members of the EU, you could just turn up in a different country and work there. That is not that. It will cost money. It will, you have to pay for a visa. There will be a cap. The worry is that if you look back at the statistics in 2016, when free movement ended, 2/3 of free movement was under 35s. So the potential is that there's up to 80 million people who will qualify for this now. What happens if how rigidly imposed is this quota going to be? Will they be able to bring their families with them? Will they be able to bring dependents? All of this is still...
Well, all of those things, I think, are the things the government is trying to stop.
Yes, but all these things are on the table.
And maybe move the age even further down so people aren't married.
The problem that they've got is that to get to this point where they've got this sort of blood out of the stone deal, in inverted commas, with the EU, is you've already given up half your crown jewels. You've already given them 12 years of fishing. So when it comes down to the actual, turning this into a legal treaty, what negotiating sort of bits do we have left to put on the table? And it's going to be this. It's going to be massive amounts of freedom of movement, with a visa for the under 30s. And the problem that I have, and I think the deep suspicion that lots of people have with this, is the British government, the British state itself, is so bad at organising this stuff. If we look back to...
organise it with lots of other countries.
No, but Uruguay, everyone keeps saying, we've got to deal with Uruguay. Yeah, it's 500 visas a year. But the problem is that remember back into November last year when the ONS went, by the way, we found an extra 166,000 people who we didn't realise were here, who they're going to add on to the net migration statistics. If you go back to 2016 when they said, there's only 3 million Europeans here, actually it turned out when they gave them settled status, actually nearly 6 million people joined, is that we're just not that good at monitoring this stuff. They'll say, we're going to keep a beady eye on it, we're going to keep controls and caps and time limits. All of history shows us that those are taken advantage of, and actually, once you give an inch, people tend to come here for a lot longer than the 2-year sightseeing visit of Stonehenge.
I think if you zoom out, there's a lot of things in this deal which ostensibly feel like they're very good retail offers for the British public, whether that's, allowing you to go and work on Club 18 to 30, go and be an au pair in Paris, or whether that's cheaper food, cheaper energy prices, whether that's being able to use the e-gates at European airports. But lots of those things, the devil is really in the detail. So Keir Starmer standing up there and promising that the agri-food deal will deliver you cheaper prices at the supermarkets. That's a big commitment for the Prime Minister to say. Cheaper energy bills because of these carbon taxes deal, again, is a very bold promise, and we know that he's come a cropper on some of those kinds of promises before. So it's lots of these things, he can potentially sell quite easily to people who are already sceptical about Brexit, but the delivery of it, and this deal doesn't deliver it, is quite...
Yeah, I know you want to come back in, but let's just see the next round of fist-fighting newspapers, which is the Mirror, the Win-Win, and the... there you go, Keir deal is a win-win. PM says British shoppers, tourists and businesses will feel the benefit. And then the Daily Telegraph with an absolute no. Kiss goodbye to Brexit with that kiss between Ursula von der Leyen and...
These pictures today were just superb, weren't they? You couldn't obviously...
My dear Keir.
My dear Keir. You always know that the EU have won the day when they start to be really nice. They start saying, dear Keir, and they say, of course, no, this is completely in line with your manifesto. And and when they're helpful, when they're being helpful, you know they've won.
They constantly kept emphasising
exactly
the very sovereign Britain that we've done
I have to
a
say,
partnership with.
my overbearing thought on this is it's just a very Keir Starmer deal. It's very middle class. It's, you know, your skiing holidays aren't going to be interrupted by those ghastly little e-gates where you have to queue up and you can't go through the e-thing. You'll be able to get a cheapo pair from
You can import
Europe,
your olive oil.
and your kids can go interrailing. And actually, who's getting screwed? As ever, working class fishermen and fisherwomen, as Keir Starmer was very keen to point out today. Fishermen and
The fishing
fisherwomen.
community.
Fishing them, as we have to remember as well.
I don't agree that all of that stuff is middle-class concern.
But it kind of is. It really is. It's a North London lawyer's view of everything that was wrong with Brexit, which was it was an inconvenience essentially to their nice sheltered
But
life.
business likes it.
Business
and
likes
getting
it
stuff
because
in
business-
between these two trading partners is hard work for people.
Big business likes it.
But little
packaging
traders give up.
But the big
Transporting
packaging
between these-
firms and the transporting firms, fine, they might like it, but the fishermen hate it. The Scottish Fishermen Federation are out today saying this is going
And
to
the
end us.
proportion,
This is
as
gonna put
everybody
us in
reminded
the
us, of the
ground.
British economy that is fishing is minuscule, you know? So,
Yes, but it's also totemic, and
somebody
it's
said it was
also,
what?
you know,
The sum total of Harrods or something, you know?
Again, I mean, that
All right.
could that not
Okay,
be the more perfect
apologies.
metaphor?
The analogy that I heard is that the bicycle industry is bigger than the fishing industry in this country. But
I mean,
it
you're
doesn't
proving my point
Actually,
here.
it doesn't have the same. It's true what he said that it doesn't have the same totemic status.
Okay, two more papers quickly
About
as well.
sovereignty as well.
Daily Mail,
I bet they're angry.
drum roll.
Oh, there it is.
Starmer's surrender, secure accused of a Brexit betrayal as he caves in on fishing rights,
You've got the double hit of Richard Littlejohn
Yeah.
and Andrew Neil.
Yeah,
that's
bang,
the left
bang.
and the
Yeah,
right.
the double punch. And then Starmer hails Brexit reset as a new era in EU relations.
But even that £9 billion by 2040, you think, God, we're going through it. We're giving away a lot for
the
that,
point
right?
is, the hearts and minds got the Brexit deal. Now are we into practicalities, and people have to live with it? And is this about fixing the practicalities? That's, you know, the broad brush of it.
Just, well, I'm sure, sort of agree, but look, business wants things to easy. Business hates change. Business likes stability, continuity, and change equals having to change and spend money. They're always going to hate this, but call me old-fashioned. 17.5 million people voted for this.
But they didn't. Specify what they voted
vote for us to not be able to sell sausages.
I think by now, even now, look what happened in the local elections, 2-3 weeks ago. People are still very angry. They don't like. You can say it's in the manifesto. I'm not sure this was in the manifesto in quite these terms.
That seemed to be all about migration, didn't it? Which is,
Yeah.
Post-Brexit migration has been different.
Of
Anyway,
course
lots more stuff to come.
Yeah.
Got to move on, do apologise. Next then, on our press preview, they think it's all over. It is now. Gary Lineker, we're talking about leaving the BBC sooner than expected. Back in a moment.
Paris reverberated to the sights, sounds and smells of conflict. There's a focal point to all this anger, and that is Emmanuel Macron. I'm Adam Parsons, Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. There are dozens of people desperately clambering to get onto that boat. It is a chaotic scene, but it's being watched by dozens of French police officers on the beach. I've reported on migration across Europe, close up on the ground, understanding that sense of desperation and meeting the criminal gangs behind it. This old fishing boat set off from the Libyan port of Tobruk. There were 606 people who were on board. So we've been distributing life jackets to all the people on board this boat, and now the first person is coming on board. This is the ugly side of Italian football.
In Italy, everything is really organized.
Football's problems with hooliganism, racism were just dormant, and now they're back and they're getting worse. We cover so many countries, languages and cultures and work hard to gain trust to bring you the full story first. Help is slowly reaching these places. It's not just homes, but whole streets like this one that have been reduced to rubble and dust. This is a picture of destruction. Everywhere you look in this mountaintop community, there is absolute devastation. These are the settlers in waiting, keen to start a new life, to annex Gaza for Israel.
The least we can do is just kick them out of our land.
Gaza, which is just 2 miles in that direction, is under attack again.
Getting the chance to tell people's stories, it's a privilege.
Our app gives you the very best of Sky News wherever you are. Breaking news, videos and analysis.
Evidence of the crisis.
Podcasts, watching us live.
Live here from Washington.
Wherever you get your podcast.
All in one place. And all at just the touch of a screen. The Sky News app. Get the full story first.
Jubilation in the streets, while some emotional.
This is a political victory for Prime Minister Modi and his Hindu Nationalist Party. I'm Neville Lazarus and I'm Sky's reporter based in Delhi. Companies like these are helping India in its trajectory to be a serious player in space exploration. Sky News, get the full story first.
We've got your Sunday mornings covered. From the front page and the sounds of the streets to the voices of the people who make the major calls and big picture politics beyond Westminster. We'll put you at the heart of our story. I'm ready. Are you? Join me, Trevor Phillips, Sunday mornings on Sky News.
Well, welcome back. You are watching the press preview, joined once again by Harry Cole and Jessica Elgott. Welcome back to both of you. Let's go to President Trump, shall we? Speaking to President Putin today for more than 2 hours, then speaking to President Zelensky and the European leaders. This story then that the Trump has dangled a trade carrot in phone calls to end the Ukraine war. Back to trade again on this matter.
This has been a hugely, highly anticipated phone call between Trump and Putin. He said that they were on the phone for 2 hours, but ultimately, even though he's talking about how deals can be done on trade if there's a ceasefire, including with Ukraine, it doesn't feel like we're a huge amount further on after this call. Donald Trump gives quite a positive account of his call with Putin. It doesn't feel like he really used the stick. He's talking about dangling a carrot, but it doesn't feel like there was much stick involved in that 2 hour phone call. One of the things he says that there could be potentially peace talks in the Vatican as represented by the Pope. It says that would be a very interested in hosting the negotiations. Let the process begin. But again, we don't know what the next step is. How do we get that process to begin?
Yeah, I think you've got to look at the sort of the good and then the bad. The good is that, compared to where we were, late February when there was that horrific Oval Office bust-up between Zelensky and Trump, it was terrible.
Yeah, these are pictures from just a short time ago, actually.
And he's sort of updating it. And actually, Zelensky and Trump are kind of on the same page now, which it took a while, and Keir Starmer and the French and actually the Polish played a key role in sort of bringing Zelensky off a ledge, essentially, and sort of getting him to accept the realities of the new world, which is you're not going to be taking back your lost territory by force, and actually to flush out Putin, you've got to offer peace. You've got to offer a ceasefire, unilateral ceasefire first. And he's left sort of Putin high and dry, which is kind of where we are now, which is it's now, Putin's belligerence is there for not just the world to see, but crucially for Donald Trump to see. He had to be shown that it was the end of the line. And we started to hear some good sort of mood music out of the White House 10 days ago or so, where he started to sort of talk up this idea of another massive sanctions package if he doesn't come to the table. Doesn't sound like that's on the table tonight, having had this 2 hour phone call. Yeah, as Jessica said, very much on the carrot end of the spectrum. But if it does get Putin or his representatives, and Zelensky and or his representatives into a room, be it in Turkey, be it in the Vatican, which I think they must have had some sort of weird conversation with the Pope about, the new Pope. I'm sure it was...
Well, he's offered, hasn't he?
I'm sure it's a throwaway comment as I'm the new Pope. What can I do to help? And no one expected...
Well, he met Zelensky and J.D. Vance, didn't he?
No one expected him to take it up from it.
Yeah.
But wherever the talks happen, if these talks, we are... If you thought about, even where we were 6 weeks ago, the idea that the Russians and the Ukrainians would be in the room for the first time since late 2022, that is a good thing. It just needs that heft of the White House behind it to to get Putin. If Putin thinks he can still win this war by himself, then why would he talk?
Well, Trump tonight saying, I think Putin's had enough. I think he wants to end it. So we'll see where it goes, certainly.
Yeah.
Quick word on Lineker making the inside pages.
Yeah, I mean, it's felt very much in the last few days that this has been an inevitability, and it's a pretty sad end to what was a fantastic career for Gary, a long one at the BBC. But, you know, pressure, I think, as well, significantly internally over that Instagram post has led to this.
He pushes luck for years. He knew.
Run out of time. Harry, Jessica, thank you.
A show of military might and menace. Why should the West trust you?
Frankly, I don't care whether the West trusts us or not.
Sky News. Get the full story first.
Have a quick word for Sky News. Is the West right? Are you fueling Russia's war machine? American journalist Evan Gershkovich is on trial here, but was first on display.
I'm Ivor Bennett, Sky's Moscow correspondent.